Well, the energy crisis has many people wondering about alternative sources of energy. Solar is one of the more popular options being explored, albeit very expensive. So if you're going to spend all that money, you need to make sure that it's done properly, because unverified videos making the rounds on social media showing the solar panels on the roofs setting themselves alight for whatever reason, prompting, of course, solar experts to issue a warning about who you actually use as your installer, and the worry, of course, delivering substandard work. Eddy Mokobodi from Sakisa Energy and Technology Group joining us to talk about this. Eddy, good to have you with us. So let's start there. With so many companies now jumping on the solar panel bandwagon, I can just Google solar panels here and I can get hundreds of options. How do I know who's qualified to do the job? Good afternoon.
Afternoon, Gareth. Thank you for having me on your show. I think the first thing consumers need to look at is they need to do a desktop due diligence, or like a desktop research of the installer that they plan to consider. So I always encourage consumers to look at the website of the installer, ask them how many projects they've done, and more importantly, are they registered with SAPVIA, which is the South African Photovoltaic Industry Association. And the reason for that is because if they registered with SAPVIA, they've undergone some training, which sort of helps them understand how to not be dodgy and how to run projects within the right regulated spec.
So when, for example, looking at the spec and as you say, doing some more online research, what about, for example, the well-known SAB standards, the SAB stamp of approval, for example? Because all of these solar systems, and I must be honest, Eddy, I don't quite know exactly how they get wired into the house. I do know this: they're going to go through your DB board. So I imagine the first thing is to make sure that you're dealing with a qualified electrician, because forget the solar panels ending up in flames, you could actually set your house alight.
That's correct, yes. So the electrician needs to give you a COC, which is a certificate of compliance, once he is complete with the installation. So the first question one should also ask is, will you provide me with a COC? And if the installer says yes, no, maybe, if they seem quite hesitant, then chances are they're not going to give you a COC. The standards also that regulate or that guide the solar space is the SANS 10142, which is the South African national standard. So, but just by asking for the COC and looking at the guy's recent work, you can sort of get a gut feel of whether or not this person is dodgy or not.
Have you ever seen firsthand or heard firsthand, Eddy, of a solar panel going up in flames? I'll tell you why. My team are going to play the video now. I'm not even sure these are actually from here. I'm not sure if you've seen the videos. I think it might be from here. Ever heard of or experienced this, where panels have caught fire?
We've seen the videos on some of the WhatsApp groups that we are part of, where there are other solar professionals, but I haven't personally seen a solar system catch fire in front of me. I have seen systems that were about to catch fire, and luckily we were there in time to just advise the client to disconnect everything, decommission the system, and redo the work correctly, or buy something which is obviously of the right quality and start that process again.
Forgive what I think could be my second ignorant question when it comes to solar systems. Eddy, feel free to laugh on my behalf. I imagine batteries are a problem, because we know how dangerous those can be. They can be overcharged. We can have surges. We've heard about this over the years, especially with the load shedding. I imagine there's protection systems there. But what technically, without confusing me too easily, what technically could happen for a solar panel to actually burst into flames? Because that's just taking the sunlight down to the battery. Why do you think we could see a solar panel going up in flames?
All right, so there's a few factors. Solar panels operate on DC, which is called direct current, and that can push up towards a high voltage beyond 100 volts. So if the system is not connected correctly, or the cables are not well insulated and connected correctly, that loose cable or exposed cable can start to arc and start catching fire with whatever it needs. Because as the current moves through that direct current, it's obviously looking for the path of least resistance. So it could be bad connections. It could be that the panels aren't connected correctly. And then on the battery side, if the batteries are not connected correctly as well, or the wires or the connector wires between the batteries are not of the correct size, that can also cause a fire. And most dodgy installers try to cut costs with regards to cabling, using of the right fuses and the right fuse sizes, because a good solar system should have fuses and safety points between each component. So you'll have from the solar to the inverter, you'll have a set of fuses and a set of isolators there. You'll have between the battery and the inverter, a set of fuses and an isolator there. And between the inverter and the DV box, you will also have a set of isolators there too. So each of the components is meant to be able to be in a position where should something go wrong, that part of the system should trip and prevent the chaos from reaching the next part of the system. So what we've seen in the market is that guys maybe don't install fuses. They sometimes cut the cables and do cut and join just to lengthen the cable instead of buying the right length. We've even seen a system whereby the guy used radio wire to connect the solar panels together. So the type of wire you see in your car radio system, he had actually connected the system with that. So it's quite a plethora of events that you get to see.